my name's Sally from the Centre for Crocodile Research. We thought today we'd put together a small video to show you how to locate a thyroid within a crocodile. The thyroid gland is an important endocrine gland as it produces thyroid hormone, and thyroid hormone dictates metabolic rate and in particular growth and development. An improper functioning thyroid not only decreases growth rates, but particularly for crocodiles also impacts scale shedding rates. This has direct implications on skin quality, particularly in the later stages of production, because the epithelial rate of turnover is reduced and it can actually make lesions appear to persist longer. This extends your production time and ultimately reduces your farm profitability. Restoring thyroid function can resume normal growth and return normal scale shedding rates. This reduces the production time to achieve top quality skins. There are two ways to assess how your crocodile's thyroid gland is functioning. The first is to take a blood sample, and remember that blood samples should only be taken by trained personnel. The second way, which is actually cheaper and more reliable if you have access to carcasses where the skin and meat have already been removed for production purposes, is to dissect out the thyroid gland, and that is what I'm here to demonstrate today. The equipment we require is a knife or a scalpel blade, forceps or tweezers. These are rat's tooth forceps and they're particularly useful for gripping the tissue because it can be a little bit slippery. But the most important thing is that for any sample that's collected, the container it's put into is pre-labelled with a sample ID which corresponds to the chain of custody form that will be submitted to the Centre for Crocodile Research so that we can test your samples. The thyroids need to be put into a sealed container that contains at least 10 times the volume, the tissue volume, of 10% buffered formalin. It's particularly helpful to know what a thyroid gland actually looks like before we go searching for one. And here are two examples here with a little scale bar so that you can put it into relative perspective. These thyroids here were out of animals that were 1.2 to 1.5 metres long. This one here, if the animal is sitting on its belly, was on the left-hand side, and this one on the right. You can see that there's a slight difference in the size, but particularly in the colour of this one, which has a bit more red and congestion. The size variation can actually be quite considerable between the thyroid glands within an animal, and this is perfectly normal. This was from another specimen. Again, this little one here is from the left, and this one here is from the right. But from all the work we've done so far, it doesn't matter the size of the thyroid gland. Their functionality between the left and the right is the same. Here we have an eviscerated carcass from an animal where the skin and meat has already been processed. This is just the organs, so it's already been removed from the rib cage. But if you were to get an animal that was still with the rib cage on, you would need to just run a knife up the sternum and pull the rib cage apart, because the thyroid glands sit right up here at the top of the thoracic cavity. Now this animal here is actually in dorsal recumbency, so in other words, it's positioned onto its back. We know that because we've got the liver here and the lungs, which are here, are sitting on the table surface. Another telltale sign of where to locate the thyroids is the loop, the tracheal loop, which is a little bit tricky to see, but you can see down here how it flicks around and then before it goes into the lungs. And this is said to help stop water should the animal accidentally breathe some in. It's just another mechanism to protect the lungs from breathing in water. So remembering what our thyroid glands look like, we are looking for, in amongst all this fatty tissue here, which also contains thymic material, right, we're looking for those translucent little round spheres. So this here, this creamy material here, this tanny creamy material here is actually thymus. And there's going to be one on the left and one on the right. And if we just explore, we can start to see the little sphere here. So we're going to carefully, again, this is where the rat's tooth forceps come into handy. you can see just cutting into that little protective sac that it sits in. And I often cut it quite roughly because we can clean it up later on, so it's more important that we just get it out as a whole gland. And the other one, on the right hand side, you can see the little sphere just in there. So again, sit down over there. So we've cleaned up our lab space a little bit. So what I just want to demonstrate here is how we can tidy up the thyroid glands a little bit. As you can see with the little fly hanging around here, this doesn't need to be a sterile procedure, and you can collect thyroid glands wherever you are, in the field, so again, this is where the rat's tooth forceps do come into handy, because these little slippery suckers. But what is critically important here is how we store these tissues. So for histology, we need the tissues to be preserved appropriately, and to do that, we put both glands into the 10% buffered formalin, and they need to stay in here for 48 to 72 hours. After that, you can replace the formalin within it with 70% methylated spirits, and these can be stored until you have enough samples to form a batch to submit to the Centre for Crocodile Research. When you're ready to ship samples, let's assume that these ones here have been stored in methylated spirits for some period of time, and we're now ready to ship a batch of thyroid glands to the Centre for Crocodile Research. What we need to do is soak paper towel in 70% methylated spirits. Right, it only needs to be damp, it doesn't need to be dripping. Right, we place the thyroid glands in the middle of the soaked tissue paper. We wrap up the glands. So that will keep them nice and moist through shipping. And we place them into a pre-labelled Ziploc bag. And this is how we will receive them at the Centre for Crocodile Research. If you've got any questions about what we've presented here or would like any further information, please don't hesitate to contact us on the details on the next slide.